Hi everyone, welcome to our QualiWare Users Group meeting for March. Thank you very much for joining us and spending the next couple of hours. Really appreciate it. Today we have an agenda put together for you of the following. My name is Cecile, I'll be the co-host, and Kevin is our president and CEO. Kevin is going to go through CloseReach news today, and then also lead the discussion about application portfolio management in QualiWare. Kevin will be doing a combination of a few slides and some things to show you in QualiWare, but we're really hoping that we're going to get good dialogue today. It's open forum, it's your user group meeting, so please do jump in and contribute. Also, we have set up Devlin to show us some QualiWare tooltips today, and he'll take a few minutes to do that. And then time permitting at the end, of course, we always have our community discussion forum. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Kevin, to get us started with our CloseReach news for today.
Okay. So welcome, everybody. Yeah, 2 years, eh? Seems like a long time. Anyhow, we have been in some discussions with QualiWare and have, I guess the next release that's coming from them will be a full feature release, and it's been delayed because of part of their team being in the Ukraine. So current target for that is end of April, beginning of May. So they do have a number of items, new features that are coming, but and we have Kuno actually scheduled to present and talk about that at the next user group meeting. So you know, I think that will probably be a well-attended meeting. But yeah, unfortunately, things were a bit delayed because of the situation part of their team is facing. For the GCEA solution contract, we've been very busy, Cecile and the team, getting all the quotes out there for the coming year, maintenance and support. And we're well ahead of the game, actually, from where we normally are. We have a new rep at PSPC, Michael Dean, who is very proactive and very responsive. So for the existing contract, the renewals for another year, all of that is well underway. And Bruno Willette has been sent out a questionnaire to all participating departments. We did discover one that hadn't received that. So if you haven't gotten a questionnaire, within your primary, secondary, or technical contact within your department, please let us know or communicate directly with Bruno Willette to at CBSA to make sure that you're included. And they're looking at how we either extend the current contract or expand it, or what the options are. So ideally the contract will be a little more flexible, or the options, but we'll have to wait and see. There is one thing that we have discovered actually just recently, and I wish we'd known it earlier, is that there are times when some of our task authorizations have been delayed, whether that is within the departmental procurement group contacting PSPC to do a contract amendment, or whether it has been on the PSPC end of things. What we've discovered actually is that we can do a task authorization without actually having to involve PSPC, except as an afterthought, as a notification after it's done. So typically the way our task authorizations have been done, we've worked with the department to figure out what the task activities are. We have documented that. We've applied our team, settled on the number of days. Then we sign, the departmental, technical authority signs. Then it goes to the department's procurement. And if they've been involved along the way, sometimes it's very quick to get over to PSPC, but they have a lot of other things that they need to do, that they're doing. And sometimes there's been quite a lag there. What we've discovered is just like well, I don't want to say a sole source contract, but anything under 40,000, including tax, so 35 grand and a few dollars, can be done just directly between CloseReach and the department, the technical authority. We can sign a task authorization back and forth, just our two signatures, doesn't need PSPC signature. And all that has to happen then is it gets forwarded after the fact to PSPC, and they'll amend the contract at some point in the future when they have a number of amendments to do. The work can start immediately. Obviously it's contingent on the department having funding, but we do not have to wait for that contract amendment. So there have been times when we've waited a while for all of the paperwork to flow back and forth between the department and PSPC, for some larger procurement task authorizations. If we'd known, we would have put a quick 40 grand one in place and started work immediately, because at the end of that, we would have had the longer term one in play. So just something that we discovered in the past about 3 to 4 weeks. So it may have an impact on some people that are considering some work and wanting to get it started very quickly. CloseReach is on our way to getting our ISO 9001 registration. So the work, Jerry Larkin, our quality and compliance manager, is off running right now, not running away from us, but he's a marathoner, and he's got some events and practices that he's doing. But we went through our preliminary audit a couple of weeks ago, and essentially no non-conformances, a couple of items for consideration. And this is using the new compliance management accelerator that we have built. So we moved very quickly from not having anything in place to actually, our audit actually happens April 8th, for the full audit, and we expect to be registered that day. So, we've been very successful at building some very intricate governance workflows to manage that flow of process approvals. We're making extensive use of acknowledgements and things like that. So all of the things that are there for you to use, whether it's, we found the out of the box was not sufficient for our needs, but it gave us the guidance to build those more complex governance workflows and new templates and things like that. So that's good news for us. And next on the list will be 27001 registration. So we're hopeful that it will go as quickly. Anyhow, the Compliance Management Accelerator is a product that we are making available to Government of Canada customers. There's no charge for the actual things that we've developed and created. There is a bit of configuration time, a couple of days configuration time that will be required, but wanted to make people aware of that. In terms of customer updates, we have shared services. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, has taken an enterprise, expanded their web licensing to an enterprise level. So we now have 2 departments that have enterprise web licenses, that's CBSA and shared services. D&D has over 6,000 web licenses as well, but others, again, it comes, I think, with a level of maturity and the wanting to share that information across your organization and then being ready for it. But we expect to see that adoption continue for the web interface. A note about that if we put a new contract in place, I'm not sure if the pricing will remain the same. So right now, the Government of Canada, when we originally bid the original contract, we had put a web, people remember the QEP license from years ago, it was a very simple, static publish only license. When QualiWare went to dynamic publishing, they had to replace that with a collaboration license, which is more costly. But under the existing contract, they had to do that for the same cost. If a new contract is put in place, I can't guarantee that that will be the same. So if you are thinking of, if your department's thinking of anything along that lines, you may want to consider that in the next year. As I say, the new contract may or may not have that same QEP license price for a collaboration license. Cecile, if I'm not mistaken, the collaboration license is about 4 times the normal cost of the old QEP?
Yeah, the current QEP license is $24. The collaboration license, full collaboration, is $105. But when you start to get into volume discounts, so if someone was looking at doing an enterprise collaboration license, you'd be looking at volume discount pricing then, and there's another, for example, a 5,000 to 10,000 level is actually $22.50. And then you put a 50% discount on top of that. So there's quite a lot of incentive involved in the enterprise licensing.
So anyhow, other updates, PSPC is now on a QualiWare cloud. We're finishing up moving them over to a cloud-based environment. And Kirill and the team have been busy the past month, 3 weeks, getting that in place. So we now have another customer who is a government customer who's using our cloud to make QualiWare available to their people. So, and we've had a couple of indications from 1 or 2 other departments that there's some interest there as well. So more to follow. We're continuing our QualiWare and quality and compliance special interest group meetings. And our last meeting actually covered, Mike Haley was involved, and we were addressing being able to use their product to determine the total cost of quality. So showed some very interesting slides about, and that is, I believe, available on our YouTube channel, or will be shortly, around how you can use the CBP, Collaborative Business Planning platform, for determining and looking at total cost of quality. And we're actually putting together a more detailed scenario around for an ITSM meeting that's coming up around call center costing. So some interesting things happening in sort of the quality and compliance space. In terms of training, we're just completing Roger Burleton's course this week. It was very successful. We had 20 people attending, and we're planning on, Roger wants to come to Ottawa in person in September and run a course. So we're currently in the planning for that. I believe it's up on our website if there are people interested in the business architecture course. And Roger's book is actually available through Amazon, and we'll make sure that everybody has the links to that if anyone is interested in his business architecture book. Our training, we're currently updating some of our courses, And we hope to have a new systems administration, an updated systems administration course available in about 3 to 4 weeks. So with some better information about best practices in that space. Anybody have any questions, comments, things that we could answer, perhaps?
We're going to invite Mike to speak about some training as well, Kevin.
There you go. Mike?
And I'm going to just let Mike just wants to share a couple of real quick slides with us. Just some updates on some of the training that his team has been doing. So Mike, I'm just going to hand this over to you. You should be able to share your screen.
I saw that. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Cecile. Are you seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Yeah, just a quick update. I know about a third of you, I think, from my count, were in attendance last week. So you heard a little bit about this, but really what we're doing with collaborative business planning, as you heard, we're positioning this now as a suitable digital twin of the organization. So we do have a variety of training. If you've not heard the term digital twin, it's a Gartner definition around what operational modeling can do for you when you bring it together with data. I know many of you, or most of you, all of you probably are very familiar with modeling. As you probably are aware, CBP is data rich, and it actually allows you to build these business models to connect with kind of current information and give you a scenario playing capability. So again, further work on Gardner, they identify EA tools as a component of this kind of DTO environment. Where CBP comes into play is really in this enterprise process analysis and enterprise performance management reporting. So it really strengthens, enhances QualiWare. It's an add-on module for that, and basically it goes after process optimization, resource and cost optimization. That's what we call the BPAC, business process analysis and costing. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the training workshops we have coming up. We offer these on a regular basis, but first thing I wanted to point out, there is a free, capital FREE, on demand. It's through YouTube, and that's kind of that. Consume at your own pace. It's a bit of a overview of some of the other workshop materials. It's obviously not hands-on, it's not interactive, and you can break it up into different pieces and look at kind of an overview if you want to look about implementation, and if you want to look at some real-world applications, what we've been doing with CBP. The actual interactive courses, we have 3 of those. 2 are coming up in April. So we have a 3.5-hour session. We run that from noon to 3:30 Eastern. That one's a Monday to Thursday session, I believe. And we go through this 8-step implementation methodology. And we do that with an interactive case study. So basically you learn a little bit, you do a little hands-on with the case study. And at the latter part of the course, you actually get hands-on with CBP. So you learn how to build kind of preliminary models, understand new information, and get into some scenario playing with the product itself. Following that, we have another workshop that brings in concepts of lean. So if you're familiar with lean, or if you're not familiar with lean, maybe more, certainly consider coming along on that. We follow the same methodology, but we bring in Lean Six Sigma approaches around define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And the 8-step methodology maps out nicely to that. So you actually earn a white belt certification in Lean. So if you ever wanted to start on a Lean journey, this is a good one to do, and actually brings in some QualiWare related learning as well with CBP. And then for the non-fit at heart, if you're really interested in the inner workings of CBP, we do have a it's really 6 sessions over 2 hours. We ran this quite successfully a month or 2 ago. We had some QualiWare people, some CloseReach people in attendance. It was a first attempt to run it in 2-hour sessions, and then kind of assign some homework. So We ran that over 2 weeks, Tuesday to Thursday, noon to 2 p.m. We follow our fairly detailed user guide, and then we have hands-on exercises. So that is completely hands-on. So all 12 hours plus, you would be accessing CBP to go through these exercises. Anyways, all of this information is available on the CloseReach training site, but we just thought we'd give you an overview of what's coming up. Thanks, folks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike. All right, Mr. O'Rourke, am I passing the baton over to you?
Okay, I guess you are.
Kevin,
So-
it's Carol from ESDC. I
Yep.
have a quick question. I looked at the webinar on journey maps, and
Yes.
at the end of it, it talks about a contract service you can buy from QualiWare called the 444, 4 hours discussion, 4 days of training, and 4 weeks of implementation. Is that still something that exists?
It has kind of gone by the wayside.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
yeah, it was an initiative that they had started in Europe, but for someone who's brand new, just getting started, does not have a complex environment, wants to do something simple like process management or something like that, you can do that. But the reality is that it is a very basic
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
scenario.
I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we had some discussions around that for when that first came out, and we're like, okay, so how much what's the value that's being delivered here? And I mean, it is a way to engage with a new customer, but really very little value to anybody who's already got an implementation up and running.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
So today we want to talk a little bit about application portfolio management. And can you see my slide deck?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I have 110 slides here. I do not intend to go through those slides.
As people start dropping off the call. Yeah.
There you go. But I guess the purpose for our discussion here today is to get some information from you. We're looking at scenarios where we are working with a number of different departments in a number of different situations, all around application portfolio management. And so on one hand, we have departments that have their needs. We have Treasury Board who has some requirements around application portfolio management and other things. And we have QualiWare that provides a certain level of capability out of the box, whether it's in QLM or whether it's in the on the website. And I guess based on our experiences so far, we're looking at what can we do to enhance the value that we're delivering, whether that's some custom development work on our side, or whether that's bringing together a group of like-minded departments and building something together. So really, this is meant to be an interactive session. I'm going to present a few things about, a few of the slides, go over to QLM, talk about both the QLM and the website there a little bit. And then I have some other slides that I do want to come back to where we break down some of the things that we're recognizing from some of our customers. So from an application portfolio management perspective, I mean, everybody has sort of seen the out-of-the-box desktops that are available. Whether there's an application landscape or a business operating model, tying capabilities in, things like that. So we all know that exists right now. From a landscape perspective, out of the box, you can present, and click on and off different applications, and the different kinds of graphics or queries that you have built into the repository will be adjusted. Some of the slides from this deck are from older versions of QualiWare, but they're still present in the current version. So, everybody knows, when you're looking at it from the web, I can look at the description and see all the different things that are linked there. Go look at it in a context view, look at the capabilities that are being delivered. And these are QRVs that are readily available in QualiWare. I mentioned the context view or different kinds of heat maps and analysis on that. So again, available right out of the box. Looking at things, from a slightly different point of view, from a business operating model, and being able to drill down into the different parts of the business and see what applications are tied to that. Again, tying to capabilities as well. What systems are delivering what capabilities. So really linking different kinds of models together. Here's a QRV with again, different capabilities, and how are those capabilities delivered? Whether it's through a system, different initiatives, again, providing that analytical capability to web users. I'm going to skip by a whole raft of these things, looking at, what are my top 5 applications and where does this data come from? So maybe it comes from an ERP or SAP or DRIMIS or your service management tool. We have the capability to pull that information in and present it, to your user community, to the people that need that application level, information, whether it's at a detailed technical level or at a strategic and costing investment level. I'll go through the menus when we're actually in the application. And again, a lot of you will already be familiar with those, but there are some I know that aren't, that are on this call. Here we're looking really at a way to structure and application portfolio management within QualiWare is based on a couple of things. One is the information system template, and one is the application architecture model. And through those and through connected templates, you have a complete view of applications, their components, their interfaces, and things like that, and who's using them, and what they're tied to, and what kind of information is relevant, to that particular application. So from an application portfolio management point of view, our experience so far with the Government of Canada has been very siloed. I have information that I gather because I have to report through Clarity to Treasury Board. And I have information that's in other systems or in QualiWare that I need to manage my application portfolio. But that's separate from how I deal with new initiatives and new projects and things like that. So the goal here is to bring things together. And again, we don't need to be the source of truth. We can be the presentation and relationship, the connection layer. Scoring. Everybody has different ways of scoring, and we've seen that in the various spreadsheets and things like that we have viewed from different departments. And then Treasury Board has its scoring as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Different life cycles. Where are things? So you can track all of your applications by dates, what stages they're in, and where are they in the life cycle, and what risks are tied with those applications. I'm going to skip by functionality. I have certain business functionality, application functionality that I have, and what systems are delivering that. So all of these are out-of-the-box queries and out-of-the-box views. I'm really not going to go through a lot of it, but the one thing that we have found, and actually since we're talking spreadsheets, we're going to talk a little bit about some work we've done there with the Treasury Board questionnaires that every department seems to be putting together, and that'll be a little bit later in the presentation. I actually want to switch over to, I'm going to change my view here. Here we go. And go over to QualiWare. If I can. There we go. Can everyone see my desktop?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I was showing you in some of the slides are here right in the system already. Whether you use these menus or not, the QualiWare queries are already in your repository. So if I want to look at all of my architectures, my architecture framework models, I have those. And I can go select one of them, and I can get a deeper view on the actual information systems that are part of that landscape. Whether that's a cloud landscape, and that's new functionality that's coming in the next version of QualiWare, is the ability to model cloud environments. So there are some new models coming in the new release that will tie into this as well. Being able to look at those information systems in a simple spreadsheet. And what we have found is that this is the primary method that people are using for tracking application portfolio management information. Our CMP spreadsheet had well on the order of 160 plus columns that we ported into QualiWare, into various templates. And the ability to update this content, interactively, to control, who is responsible for what, and edit that information. Doing that in QualiWare makes sure that all of your content is up to date, as opposed to an Excel spreadsheet where do you have the most recent version of that, right? So being able, again, to go in and update that content and, find the person who's truly responsible for for that information and have them in here. And again, here comes the decision. Am I using people, or am I using positions that are responsible for that? Or am I using, and in QualiWare, it won't matter. I could put the position in here because the position is linked to the person who currently holds that position. As opposed to a spreadsheet in Excel, I don't have that capability, that ability to do that, to link to that other kind of content. Again, scoring, whether you go with QualiWare's, which is, industry standard kind of scoring, or, you decide that you need to map it in some other way. Creating those kinds of scoring attributes is a simple thing to do, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So we have a variety of different ways of looking at content. or the plans that are tied to that content, or what's my schedule look like for changes to those applications in the future, or what capabilities are currently being delivered. Everybody has to report to Treasury Board the capabilities within their organization. Seriously, those should be linked here so that people can understand, what systems are going out of service and how's that going to affect a business capability or some other type of capability that I'm delivering. From an asset lifecycle perspective, being able to look at those information system assets and what is happening to them over time. And we faced this when, whether it's an information system or whether it's, a series of ships or systems on ships. We faced this in a project where we were working with naval requirements, and they wanted to understand what their future capability was and what assets could be applied to that. And so they needed to know at any moment in time, what's our current state of deployment. The same thing applies to systems. So whether it's at a high level, understanding risks, whether it's tied to capabilities or functionality, whether it's from a life cycle perspective, and again, applications or software or dependencies or my vendors and contracts, these are the things that a departmental APM group needs to know. Treasury Board, not so much. Or from an integration point of view with data mapping. So all of these capabilities are here right now, and on the QLM side, there's already built-in functionality here that can be used, within QLM. So if your architects are not working in the web, if they're working primarily in QLM, we can generate those different kinds of views, score views, Gantt views, and we can control what's displayed on the web. Whether we're showing some of the scores or not. From the people that are here, departments that are using any or all of this right now, any comments? Or is anyone? Everybody's on mute. Okay.
Everybody's very quiet this morning.
Yeah, this is Dan from CRA. We haven't used it yet, but it is something that we've looked at and possibly would pitch to the APM group about the possibilities of using it. One of the things that I think we struggle with a little bit is you mentioned that a lot of that functionality is tied to the information systems object right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's I guess more of a notion to use the Archimate language a little bit more rather than the default QualiWare object. So rather than using information systems, we would probably want to use application components. And then we're wondering if that APM functionality would work the same across those objects.
So the QRVs would have to be rewritten, but the the basic concepts are there, right? So It's not, I wouldn't say it's a difficult thing to go through and, edit and modify those QRVs to pull up the right information. It's whether and QualiWare has, one of the things that they have done is in QLM, and you can see this pretty easily in when you look at, if I look at an activity, all templates, please. Or, where, oh, I know, there we go. You know, if you look at a particular activity, one of the things that they have done, you know, all of the attributes that you would see in an activity, you know, all of these dialogues are carried over into the corresponding Archimate template.
Yeah,
right?
I did see that in the newer version. I have noticed that. Yeah.
That's right. So so Archimate as a notation essentially says, here are some layers, here are some shapes, how you choose them to join them together. Well, we have some basic rules around that. But if you want to add any attributes, if you want to add any fields, feel free. So QualiWare in the initial version of Archimate came out with a very bare bones set of attributes for different kinds of objects. And let me see if I can find one here that has has some information in it. So but what they've done is they have transferred some of the different attribute fields, for different kinds of from their base product, and stereotyped those into the corresponding Archimate objects. So you could use all of the same attribute level information, you just have to point it to a different template type, right? Rather than the information system, you'd point it towards the corresponding Archimate template that you've used. Like QualiWare, Archimate, as it's evolved, has not sort of, because they have legacy users, all of the old layers that they no longer use or different models, they're still there. But, the layered viewpoints, some of the newer model sets, those, that's really the, where you'd want to make use of the out-of-the-box templates. And those different, so you can see here all of the, here's the application component in Archimate, and you can see all the same things: product lifecycle, different lifecycle dates. This looks like standard QualiWare. So from here you can, again, the QRVs would have to be modified, but there's, they've already forged the path for you. Okay. So that's definitely, Archimate is one of the considerations that people are looking at for application portfolio management. I want to actually go to.
So just one other quick question is,
sure.
So with your experience with other government departments, how many have been using the application portfolio management within QualiWare to either manage internally within that department and or reporting up to TBS?
I'd say there are lots that want to do it and are partway there. I would say that there are, CBSA is far enough, is probably further along on the Archimate path, but we have done a couple of proof of concepts with pulling the information into the standard QualiWare templates. What those departments have done beyond that, I'm not sure. Okay. So it's still, well, and that's part of the reason for this conversation, because we are still very early days with this, right? When people bring QualiWare in, typically processes an easy target, right? Processes and, strategies and maybe organizational diagrams. Application portfolio management is a little more involved. I know D&D went down the path to a point, but I don't think their application portfolio management group followed through on it. I know that RCMP, we've taken their information into QualiWare, into a repository for them, but we did not address sort of And that really was just a proof of concept because they wanted to get out of the spreadsheet world, right? Because regardless of how you're going to use QualiWare, right now, everybody, every department we've talked to is living in Excel spreadsheets. Unless they have built a custom system using Cognos or maybe Tableau or a couple of other things, but none of those systems address all of the, the issues that people have in application portfolio management. Let me go to a couple of slides here that I have. Slide number 104. I'm going to stop first at use cases. So things that we found, typical APM use cases: find an application and view the details. Find any or all application architectures and view and build those new models. Look at models where is my application used across my organization. Assessing the impact of modifying or decommissioning an application, as is and to be views, right? Modeling over time. Linking to functionality and business processes supported by that application. And I would say that this is an easy target for a lot of organizations. Whether you're going to use QualiWare for your APM or whether you do right now, your business users want to know what systems are supporting my business, what capabilities are being delivered by whatever application. We're doing some work with Global Affairs right now, and they have a system that tracks all this stuff. And we ask the question, so how does your business user find this out? Oh, they come to us with a query, with a question. And we then go and build some custom queries and try to pull that information together for them. It's an involved process. It's not a user-driven process. Hey, I just need to know this information. What we have found is that most application portfolio management systems have no idea what kind of information is residing in those applications or used by those applications. So we see these as architectural use cases. Whether you use something else for APM, we need that information inside of QualiWare from an architecture perspective to tie to business capabilities that your users are concerned with, to look at what information is used where in the organization. To look at system dependencies, because that's one thing that APM doesn't show. Most APM applications that we've encountered in the government and other areas don't show dependencies. We actually were talking with ESDC recently about those system dependencies and about how they could model APIs. So if you don't have your applications in QualiWare, how do you model out what your APIs are? What the classes, and you can use class diagrams to do that. QualiWare is looking at a thing called Open API and being able to use that to help model the linkages between applications. So again, regardless of whether you do your formal application portfolio management in QualiWare, that information at some level needs to be here if you're going to model those kinds of interfaces and understand the information that's flowing between them, because there is no other system that combines all of those things. Different project work, how is that affecting applications? And then performance scoring. So I'm actually going to go to, I want to be here. What we found in Government of Canada. So we find enterprise architecture and, look at Treasury Board says, talk to me about BIATs. business, information, application, technology, security, and privacy. So from an EA perspective, that can be handled in QualiWare. But meanwhile, you've got an application portfolio management function somewhere else. So if you're going to meet that Treasury Board directive, there needs to be some link between the business architecture and the business user community and that APM function, whether it's in QualiWare or not. You know, if I look at organizational APM requirements that we've come across, it has to do with investment, it has to do with life cycle management, it has to do with application development and support. You know, what gets impacted when a system is down, what data gets impacted if we've got a breach, you know, through an application. Those kinds of things are common things that we've encountered in the departments that we've worked with. And how do they solve it? With Excel and Word, an in-house solution, Cognos, you know, some kind of Power BI or BI solution, Clarity. So there are a couple of departments that are trying to use Clarity to manage their application portfolio management, and then exporting parts of that to the loader for Treasury Board, you know, for their APM reporting. You know, the other thing that we encounter are questionnaires, because Treasury Board reporting isn't just about the technology side of things. They want business information as well. There seems to be a lot of manual effort involved everywhere, you know, that we talk about this with departments. So this is kind of current state. You know, anyone else have anything to add here?
Just a question. You had mentioned that you did something with national defense. They had D&D looked into this and decided against it. Do you know any more details on that?
It wasn't necessarily that they decided against it. I think there were some funding issues.
Okay.
And I haven't been, you might talk to Pascal here, who's on this call after the fact, or Vince Cannell, or anybody in the EA group there. But Vince was around at the time that we were, you know, we were looking very heavily into that, and could probably provide some background.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Any other global affairs? They use a thing called Spectrum, which I think is a Cognos powered system that they've built. Some people are using SharePoint, but a lot of it is in Excel.
Kevin, you mentioned surveys.
Yes.
QualiWare doesn't have anything for surveys yet, do they?
That's my next
Something
slide.
Easy? Oh,
that's my next slide.
Well, there's your introduction to your next slide, Kevin. Thank you.
No problem. Treasury Board requirements. I mean, so we have, you know, we've got EA's requirements. You know, if you're trying to, you know, really build an enterprise architecture, you know, applications are part of that. You've got organizational APM requirements. You know, how do we manage those applications and support them over time? And then you've got Treasury Board that says, I need some information too. You know, tell me about your applications, and we're going to use Clarity to do that. All well and good. That was their choice. But Treasury Board also asks questions about capabilities. Give me a list of your departmental capabilities. Give me a list of your departmental services, things like that. And that's really tying back to the whole enterprise architecture framework. You know, that however your department chooses to do it, you know, if you're using QualiWare, it's pretty easy to pull that information out. You know, Treasury Board has its capability model, and, you know, we have been involved with, and we know other departments have taken that base model and layered their own departmental capabilities on it. either as a decomposition of one of the Treasury Board ones at a higher level or as something separate. But there are certain reporting requirements that Treasury Board is looking for as well. Sorry, it wasn't the next slide. It'll be a couple, but it is coming. So out of the box, I mean, we talked about this, right? QLM functionality, information system templates or the Archimate templates, predefined QLM functions. You know, there are predefined QRVs and web functionality already there. We can replace those Excel spreadsheets. The benefit is the information is in your repository and is accessible by other users through custom QRVs, you know, custom HTML dialog layouts, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But, you know, the capabilities to manage this function, these applications, are there in the tool. Or we pull the information from something else that you're using. So you asked me about questionnaires. So interestingly, as we have been working with PSPC and a little bit with Global Affairs, there's a questionnaire that they have that they send out to their users, and depending on who's responsible for that application, every person will fill out a separate questionnaire. And there's a separate questionnaire for each application. So we've taken that questionnaire and you can see it, oh, sorry about that, right here in a QualiWare spreadsheet. How large is your user community? Does the application support a large transaction volume? Does it have time-sensitive transactions? And anybody who deals with Treasury Board reporting, I think, will recognize some of these questions, right? Some of them may be departmental only, but we've essentially taken those questions and put them into QualiWare, tied to an information system, so that somebody can then look at all of the systems that they're responsible for and answer those questions. Now, to be honest, this would be a lot easier if the questions were in the, you know, in the first column, and you know, the my different systems were across the top. Is how I would have structured this spreadsheet. But QualiWare uses a third party to provide these spreadsheets. It's called Kendo UI, and they've integrated that functionality into the QualiWare tool. I've been having a couple of discussions with Jacob about the ability to reverse columns and rows. So that is something that they've recognized might be useful. So we may see that at some point in the future after we have some more discussions about that. But for now, this is what you're faced with in terms of putting this into QualiWare. Here's my questionnaire. So I'll pick on PSPC today because they're fresh in my mind. They have an Excel spreadsheet that has the first page that says pick your branch. And then it lists out the people, it highlights the people out of a big list who have an application within that branch. And when I click on that person, then I get to choose the application. And I have to then fill it out. And then if I have a second application, I have to fill out a second questionnaire. So it's not even as simple as here are my 6 applications, you know, or 7 that I'm allowed to edit and change. And I can see them all in one place. And oh, these 2 are related, so it's the same answer. You know, so this is a simpler way to do that. And I can put that in a QRV. So now I can start to let's do some analysis on this, right? What's the level of necessity? I want to see all my citizen-facing applications. You know, is it time sensitive? show me, filter it by my user community size, that kind of thing. So this is a way, and let's not even talk about going to the 3D visualizer, which is possible from this. So here are some ways that exist right now to pull those questionnaires in. And here's that questionnaire in a dialog layout. So if rather than a spreadsheet, I want to go in and edit that information system directly and enter my questionnaire, here it is. And I'm doing validation on that information all along the way. So now I'm going to edit that information. I'm going to create that information, and then I'm going to freeze that object. Now, next year, when I have to provide the same information, I'm going to create a new revision. And now I can go back and I will have access to previous revisions. What did I say 2 years ago? What did I say this year or last year? What am I going to say this year to that? So any application portfolio management system we've encountered so far does not give you any of that kind of revision management capability unless you've saved your questionnaire somewhere. So using the HTML dialog layout, I can query my, look at my template that I'm using as the basis for all of this. And I can create a specific questionnaire, or I could create a series of questionnaires from the web because I have different user groups that are going to answer different questions. So maybe my business users only see part of the picture, and my application guys who are responsible for those applications see a separate one. And so I've created several different HTML dialog layouts based on the user role. Again, the best, I would not suggest, well, this is through the HTML dialog layout for editing, or I could open an individual object and here it is, right? We've created a special dialog for PSPC APM questions. So I guess part of what I'd like to get out from people here today is, can we create a GC APM question? Or does it have to be specific by department? Or maybe there are some general ones. Maybe we should be looking at what Treasury Board wants, and we create a TBS APM questions and a departmental APM questions.
That would be your best bet.
Sorry?
That would be your best bet. I believe I work at a couple departments and they're all using the TBS framework, the APM portal. However, some departments are more advanced than others, like ESDC, for instance, are using a whole SQL reporting capability. And they've developed some very, very fancy dashboarding and stuff, right? Other departments are using Excel, others are just, but at the end of the day, every department needs to report back to TBS at the end of the year. They have to provide a plan for mission critical applications, let's say investment planning for 3 years on all their mission criticals. So I think that would be a good start for sure. And if, there are departments that wants to go deeper, they could go and provide more extensions to those questions.
So
but they're pretty similar. Yeah.
So we actually created this. We didn't do a case maker change. This was actually created using the GUI. But the problem you face with the GUI, and frankly, something like this should not be done in the GUI. If it's a simple 1 or 2 attribute creation, you can see here how my questions are truncated. The GUI way of changing your meta model is not a great way for something like this. You should be using a CaseMaker project to do this, something of this level. You can then, once you've created the dialogue and the attributes that you want to capture, then you can use the out-of-the-box content editing, dialogue manager, dialogue layout types of functionality in the tool, and spreadsheets to create custom, simpler spreadsheets, smaller spreadsheets. But frankly, to create labels like this, via the GUI, interface tools, customize, add dialogue, add attributes. We really do not recommend that way of doing it. We suggest you need to use CaseMaker.
I think JR, I don't know if JR is on the call, but we found that the information system framework was very different from what TBS framework is, which would require some modification to the information system. And as you know, it's always harder to modify existing templates than to create brand new ones from scratch. Right?
I wouldn't necessarily say modify the whole template, but by adding dialogues that are not going to be over. So this dialogue here that we added to information system will never be overwritten by any kind of QualiWare change, because it has a unique name, PSPC, in front of it. And in actual fact, when you create an attribute, we suggest best practice is putting a unique identifier in front of that. And that way, QualiWare, as they continue to enhance their product, will never overwrite or interfere with things that you've built. So that's pretty standard practice or recommended practice. But yeah, you could create a brand new object, but frankly, not always necessary or advised if you can make use of most of what's there, because then you can take advantage of things that QualiWare continues to develop. And that's sort of the trade. That's the trade-off that people face. So I'm going to open it back up to everybody else, and are we on the right track for building something like this specific to the Treasury Board requirements?
Oh, definitely. As far as the cutting off of these labels here, this was not done with CaseMaker, right? It was done with the dialogue.
That's correct. It was done through the GUI, and we wanted to show.
So in other words, okay.
Yeah, we wanted to show people the impact of not doing it this way.
In CaseMaker, I see what you mean. Okay, so there's an easy fix for it.
Oh yeah, yes. And again, whether people in the department have someone who can do CaseMaker work, or whether they use us to do that, in either situation, we can, it is
charge a lot of money, because I could have hundreds of ideas of CaseMaker work.
Well, and that's the trade-off, right? Do I have enough work to have a full-time in-house person do that, or is it more cost-effective for me to outsource that and have someone else who understands some of the implications and things that they might encounter do that for me? Always the trade-off between buy and build.
Gerald Ladd here from SSC. I like what they see. I've done APM reviews for a decade, probably more than a decade, 15 years. And yes, this is an advance. This is something that I've been wanting to see and have suggested, but to try and build something like this in-house has never been justified. But to do it at the GC level, so that we all, when we fill this out, it's sort of automatically visible after appropriate vetting, of course, to TBS would be excellent, not only for the current APMs, but where we're going in terms of cloud first, because TB is developing or has developed sort of models as to how cloud systems would work. And I can see that would be the next step, is putting those models into QualiWare. But first, let's do this because of all the applications currently out there. It also would help with the people in TB who say, why do we need all these unique programs, meaning systems that say do grant management or that do acquisition planning or budgeting or whatever the business need is out there, where are the similarities. So that would also help with enterprise level prioritization.
We find there's a disconnect sometimes with what Treasury Board is asking for and what departments need to manage, things. Like Treasury Board asks, how many users are there? And there's like a lot, or a whole lot, or some, as opposed to in QualiWare, put the number in. Is it 1,200? Okay. And sometimes Treasury Board gives a range. A small is 0 to 400. Medium is 400. 401 to 800. Things like that. We find that there's there seems to be a bit of disconnect there between sort of the operational requirements and the reporting requirements. So if you could automate some of that, hey, I'm gonna create my load now for clarity, and oh yeah, the user, it says 1,200. Well, I know that translates into this for them.
Yeah, that came up.
Yeah, excellent insight.
They tell you what to do, but they don't tell you how. That's the problem with TBS. So it's very abstract sometimes what they're asking you. And things change a lot. Like for the pandemic that we just went through, the requirements for the management accountability framework and the IT plan, it completely was revamped from A to Z. So they try to make our jobs easier. So they're simplifying things as we mature in the government. So more department gets, high notes or high scores. Well, those questions get actually, eliminated with time. So it's a evolving process that they have. So I understand, like, sometimes you don't even know what a large organization is. Like you're saying, it's like you don't know, what do they mean by a larger organization? Like 600 could be considered as a large organization. But you can't compare a 600 user organization with a 10,000 one, right? It's completely different dynamics. So I think I understand where you're coming from, Kevin, on this.
Yeah, well, you can see the first question here, right? Row B. How large is the user community? Small, large, very large? I mean, not useful from someone inside the organization that's going, okay, what was the impact on that application going down? Oh, it was large. No, 4,000 users now don't have access. That has impact. Large, not so much.
But
usually when you got, sorry,
that question is across jurisdictions. I've seen it in the Ontario government, I've seen it in the Alberta government, I've seen it in the BC government, and now the federal government. There's no standard.
So when you don't know, you have to ask your representative at TBS to clarify these kinds of things, right? So, and they do information sessions every year as well. And those are great venues to bring up these kinds of questions as well, so that they can put everybody on the same page.
So I guess a question I have, do people see a difference internally in their organization on how they use APM stuff versus what's being provided to Treasury Board?
Well,
or is it a very, it's not, yeah, they're different, but it's not really a problem because we just manually do whatever we have to do.
I see two different, like at ESDC, there's two different kinds of APMs. There's the one that we have to give to TBS every year, but we also do our own analysis with a very sophisticated reporting with SharePoint and SQL. We have our own dashboarding there. So it's almost like we're running those two in parallel. So, yeah.
So how does so you have this system for APM. So how do you tie that to your other architecture components, or is it? Does it feed the architecture information that's in QualiWare?
You can, yes, by importing the data into QualiWare, like an APM spreadsheet or something like that, right?
Okay.
You can just
so
bring it in.
I guess that's a question, for others on this call. Is that happening in your group, in your departments? I mean, I know Global Affairs has this Spectrum system, and the only way they get information out of it is through custom queries, but I know that the EA group would like to make more of that information available to business users via QualiWare. Is anyone else facing that?
Sam from CBSA. At CBSA, we're doing. Do you guys hear me well? I'm not on my work computer,
Yes.
so okay,
Yep.
cool.
We do.
No, you're good.
Cool. Yeah. So Treasury Board got more than 200 questions that they are asking us about an application. So we were talking about having multiple HTML dialogue. An HTML dialog layout that contains everything, every question GC wide, right? That was one of our project, if I'm not mistaken. But for example, our problem here at CBSA is we've got user access issue. We need to separate, for example, the IT security attribute and the IT continuity attribute, the finance stuff. They need all to be located in a different area. And using the RAS key, for example, for the user access, and using QualiWare as leverage to allow them that. In the end, this is a monster. APM at CBSA is a huge monster of customization, very hard to maintain, and we are looking for solution. And at the same time, we know that Treasury Board will shake everything up and start over again this year. I don't know if you guys are aware, but a lot of question will change. I'm not sure the overall impact of their change, but they will. I heard that they will torch everything down to start again, and as we have got a lot of customization, this will impact us a lot. But my point is the APM practice, Treasury Board wise, is very complicated if you want to include multiple users. If you are alone behind your computer and want to answer all questions, yes, the spreadsheet, like we see right now at the screen, this is a very good idea. But when it comes to like multiple users, I've got a total of 14 14 different dialogue layout only for the sub-assessment that we have, so the scoring area for Treasury Board, and I've got 8 different sub HTML dialogue layout to separate for the IT security, IT integration, IT continuity, the business database and data admin. I've got multiple different HTML dialog layouts that I need to split up because they can be accessed only by these group of people. So this is only for Treasury Board. The rest of the APM is through relationship with the architecture. We do custom queries, custom diagram to allow users to consume the information around that. But yeah.
Okay. No, that's an interesting. So you're well down the path to well beyond most organizations, which are 180 column Excel spreadsheet, and not even the questions that you're seeing here.
So yeah. So my point, and the important point is we need to, when conceptualizing something, we need to be aware of the scalability and the impact of Treasury Board. And my final point around that is we should include Treasury Board in the discussion regarding if we are going to create a GC-wide application attributes and everything around the application. We need to include Treasury Board so they can be aware of everything, because this is GC-wide. So
okay, that's good
it's
advice.
like a dream, man.
Yeah.
Just a quick question on that. With your 7 dialogues, are you using roles to separate them? So if I have a security role, I see just that security dialogue. If I have, that costing, the finance, I only see the costing dialogue. Or how did you split up your different dialogues? So I only see one, not all.
That's correct. We use roles inside Rasky. So we assign, for example, for the responsible, we can assign a role which is the IT security professional, which the IT security goes from top to bottom of the application list. These guys goes and do one application by application. And we create another role, for example, for the service portfolio. So different portfolio are splitted throughout the application, and they assign their own bunch of applications. So yeah, roles, position, person, object.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is sorry, James Chang here. Just to echo what has been said before too, is that at CBSA we do understand there's an application portfolio management practice that is internal to each department agency, and then there's the reporting requirements of Treasury Board, which is somewhat discussed here on their questionnaire. So we try to integrate both to having a lot of that information already pre-existing in the repository on QualiWare, and anything that is new or specific to Treasury Board will create those questions, let's call it this at this time, and we just to collect that information and then report it back to them every year. So that's what we also have to keep in mind. There's 2 sides of the coin. One is for Treasury Board specific every year, and then the other part that is the day-to-day. And we have to sort of balance both so that at least we'll have base information that already exists, and then any additional information that Treasury Board requires will be updated during that cycle.
Great.
Yeah, hoping that everybody, got that point. So it's not just answering all the questions from Treasury Board, which doesn't cover any other additional portfolio management activity that needs to be done. So it's more complex than just that. And Treasury Board pretty much adds to the complexity.
They always add to the complexity. That's their job.
Yeah, my experience tells us that, yeah.
Anyhow, okay. Well, as if anyone else have any comments, suggestions, ideas, thoughts along this route?
Well, I really like the fact that you're putting some efforts in this, Kevin. I think it's very important that, especially for all of us in the government, we're all reporting back to Treasury Board. So a good job on this. Appreciate it.
I wish Treasury Board were more into using architecture to define the things that they do.
it's not an IT shop, it's a policy shop, eh? So
Yeah, I
that's
know.
why sometimes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
A day for
The
Treasury Board, and they're not
challenge.
even on the call.
Yeah, it would be helpful if all departments use the same thing. So when we submit it to the Treasury Board, it wouldn't be so complicated, you know.
And it could be automated too, right?
Yes, well, that's
Clarity.
ideally what we're looking to try to, to try to figure out. Is there a way to make this simpler for everyone to, well, we also have an ulterior motive, right? The more people are using QualiWare, the better. But if we can make it simpler for everyone as well, obviously then, it makes everybody's
And one
life
thing
better.
that is hindering people as well is our CMDBs. You know, we used to be able to just connect a network discovery tool on our network, and on Monday morning we would have a whole CMDB populated. But the problem is we're going through SSC, and SSC works as they use tenants. So it's very difficult to do network discovery when you have SSC supplying all the federal government servers and stuff, right? So you can't do CMDBs using network discovery tools. It's very, very challenging. I don't know how many departments have a CMDB up and running. I doubt very much anybody dealing with SSC that they have one. So having a CMDB would just simplify quite a bit with the APM as well, right? It would be, you could do a lot of analytics.
Well, and QualiWare can pull in that CMDB information. You know, we have a link with ServiceNow, and we have the ways to, other ways to bring content in. So actually, I think Kuno at one point did a demo of while you don't necessarily want to use QualiWare as your operational CMDB for your support people, having the information that's in that CMDB, certain levels of information in there in QualiWare is an advantage. So
absolutely.
Interesting. I had a comment made that really what we need is an information modeling exercise so that we can map what's captured in QualiWare. So what's captured in QualiWare gets the data for all the possible stakeholders. So sort of organizational versus Treasury Board versus the business user community, what their requirements are from an information perspective, and then it could be mapped perhaps more easily in in QualiWare in a way that's usable by more organizations. Really,
just a question on the nuts and bolts of using this. Does each user have to have a QualiWare license that fills this out?
So an architect can edit the content, but to edit a spreadsheet like this requires what's called a plus license, a collaboration plus license.
But I mean, now, like we have the business areas all fill this out. Now I happen to have a QualiWare user license, but there's others that fill this out that don't.
So they would not need an architect's license. They would need a plus license.
Okay. Thank you. And the cost of that varies by size naturally. But
well, actually, it's Cecile. I want to say $750.
That's for one, but to Gerald's point, that's depends upon volume. So there's different price breaks depending upon volume.
Or you could do some things like ESDC has done, which is buy some of those as concurrent licenses. So depending on your user community usage, it's not a named user license, but a concurrent user license.
Especially
so that would make it easier.
People that wouldn't need to be in there all the time.
Exactly.
Kevin, I have a quick suggestion to make. This spreadsheet you were showing looks amazing. And if you ask me how to do that, I would not know how. And I have no idea if there is a webinar somewhere that we're struggling with spreadsheets, and
Okay.
we need to know how to bring those into QualiWare. And I don't think there's an easy way unless you've been doing it for a long time. And I find that information very challenging to find. So I don't know if you could have a demo set up or a webinar created on how to bring a spreadsheet, a CSV data into QualiWare and create a diagram automatically. That kind of stuff are huge value propositions for using this tool, and we're having a hard time selling it right now. So
Okay.
it'd be nice if you could arrange that for us.
So for creating a spreadsheet like this one, you know, that you see, where is it? Well, this is the QRV, sorry, this is the spreadsheet. So creating these kinds of spreadsheets, actually there are some very detailed instructions on the Center of Excellence, QualiWare Center of Excellence. So once the data is in there, so the thing you're talking about is the generic table interface for importing CSV.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, both. I would look at both, right?
Okay.
Because
well,
it's confusing.
Right now,
I don't know.
So to create a spreadsheet like this, you could actually use the
QRVs.
We'll put a link, send a link out to people that points them to the proper thing in the Center of Excellence that explains all the various formats and things like that. One thing a lot of people don't know is that you can actually create a secondary spreadsheet. So I could have two worksheets, and the secondary sheet actually can do calculations. So tell me how many of my applications are very large, how many are large, and it will actually do the counting. So various functions that you have in Excel, like count and not blank versus blank, blank, you can use a lot of those functions in these spreadsheets and create a calculation worksheet to supplement this. And but I'll point you to, we can definitely point you to that, or we have coaching available.
I know you do, and I would need some for sure. It's just, we don't have a big team. We have some really good people, actually. One is on the call, but you can't.
So sometimes just a simple, 1 hour coaching session could address some of these things as well.
Okay,
and
it's just, are those expensive? Like, how does that work? Do you know?
You go to our website and you can pull it off the website and pay for it on your credit card.
Sounds pretty easy. Okay. Thank you very much.
We make it real easy. and actually, we sell different sessions. I mean, there's Cecile, actually, I should go to CloseReach.ca, but I'm not showing the right.
And I can follow up with you afterwards, Carol, and give you some information on that too.
But yeah, we do have coaching, different blocks of coaching right on the website that make it very easy to arrange that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. I'm going to relinquish and give it to Devlin because he's got something to show people.
He does. It's going to be very exciting. So everybody, today is Devlin Lemoine from our support team is going to show us some things in QualiWare. It's Devlin's debut, so please be kind to him. And he's going to show us a few things in the tool and spend a few minutes on some tips. So Devlin, I'm going to pass this over.
Okay. All right, so today I am going to be talking about system parameters, which is a built-in function that QualiWare has. It is in QLM only, it's not on the web. But for some of the parameters, you will see a result on the web, not for too many in my experience. But basically, the way these work, if you'll recall last QUG, we looked at the add dialog function, which created a QualiWare setup object, which created an extra dialog in a template. So this basically works exactly the same way, but there is a lot less settings, so it's a little bit simpler to use. However, there is over 100 options here. So I'm only going to show 5 or 6 probably. So I'm going to start with a really simple one. So actually first let's take a look at this window here. So you've got the name of the function. There's a small little help tooltip here. And if you click here, you'll get a slightly more expanded help that tells you what commands you can use here. So we see we get 0, the barbed arrow, that's the default arrow that we get on a diagram. So that's telling us that's what this looks like. And then we've got 1, a more primitive arrow. So I'm going to make that change, and you can see what that looks like. Go apply, save, and we can see the arrow shape setup object appears here. And it's a very, very simple code, and it's easy to revert. You just change this back to 0 if you don't want it. And we can see our arrows, there we go, are all not barbed anymore. They're the primitive arrow. So in addition to that, we're going to go back into system parameters, and we're going to go arrow size. And 5 is the default size of the arrow. Was there anything special in here? Not really. And basically here, we're just going to change the number here. And as far as I can tell, there's no upper limit, but there is a limit where it stops being useful. So we're gonna keep it at 20. And now we've got bigger arrows. And these are the 2 functions that I've found will apply to a diagram on the web. I haven't been through the 100 functions, but here we'll see it update here. There we go. See, so we've got the updated arrows on the web. So now into a slightly more interesting piece of these the system parameters. So there's one called alt mode, which alters how labels work. So we all know that to edit this label, you've got to hold down alt, click, and then we can change it, or hold down alt and we can drag it around and move it. But maybe I don't want to hold alt. Maybe that's one step too far for me. So we're going to go alt mode. Oops. Alt mode. There we go. And the default value here is 3. So if we look at the help here, 3 tells us label can only move if only alt is pressed. Label can only be edited if only alt is pressed. And then there's 3 other options here. Only alt is pressed for move, and label edit is possible. So that means you don't need to hold alt. You can just click and you'll automatically get the edit option. And this is the reverse. So I'm just going to set it to 0 so we can see what that looks like. Whoops. 0, apply, save. And again, we see there's another new QualiWare setup object here. So now if I click on here, and you'll just have to trust me that I'm not holding alt, and we can just click and edit, click and drag, no need for extra steps. So the next one, this is one that I've found pretty useful actually, is the multi-sub-dialog system parameter. And actually before I run that, let's just open this up. So basically, these are all our sub-dialogs. Unfortunately, you can't open them up side by side and do a comparison of what's in here and what's in here. You just have to change. You can't open up a second object. It's just the way it is. But if we go system parameters again, multi-sub-dialogs, and we change this value to 1. So if we go to the help, it's basically if any non-zero number, yeah, for the code. All right, then we go save. Our multi-sub-dialogs pops up here. Again, very simple code. And then we open this up. So we see we're on information right now. If I go business process, we've got 2 windows, decomposition, 3 windows, and we can edit all of these simultaneously. However, if you click OK, cancel in any of these, it will close all 3. So make sure if you apply this and you're editing, make sure you're good with everything in all the dialogues. Next up, repository exclusion list. So this is basically if you've got a template in your repository, like for example, quality control here, I'm not using it. So if you've got a template that you don't want visible to your users, you can go back into system parameters. And this is all very quick and easy. Repository exclusion list, this one here. All right, for this one, I'll have to type out quality control. Apply, save. This is the list it generates. If you want to add more templates, you can hit enter here and just add another template. Or if you want to delete this one, just delete it and run. So if we go OK, we can see it's still here, but if we refresh this and go down here, it is now gone. If I go back into our repository exclusion list and remove it from here, come on, just run it like that. We can see, oh, it didn't come back. That's not good. Let me check this again. I think that was the mistake I made. There we go. Now it's back. So it's just hiding the template. It's always there, so it's always easy to reverse. And we can do the same thing with these buttons down here. Again, we go system parameters. We go repository bottom. Whoops. Repository bottom. And basically this column is the name of the button, and this column is the icon. So say I don't want this Archimate one here anymore. We'll go cut that out and apply. And we can see this gets applied even if I don't hit save. The issue with this is that if I only hit apply, it won't create the QualiWare setup object. So next time I log into QualiWare, the change is going to revert back to normal. And I can add the Archimate button back in just as easy as that. And if I want to, I can change the icon to something else. So for example, I see business chart is an icon here. So there we go. Now it looks like a business chart. So it's basically it's just added functionality. I personally haven't had time to go through the 100 or so. I mean, it's more than 100. I think I counted up to 70 before I decided I'm just going to say it's over 100. But yeah, that about covers the options that I was going to show today.
Great.
Yeah, I can show one
I
more.
have a question.
Sure.
Does it only apply to this repository?
It's only the repository that the object is in. The QualiWare setup object is in.
And if I wanted to make it apply to my entire installation, could I put it somewhere else? Like the initialization file?
It's easy enough to copy the file over. So you could just do an export of it and bring it in. And also, I just changed the color of my repository Explorer to green using that last setup object. Yeah.
Sam from CBSA here. Also, this is a simple QCL command. So if while loading QualiWare, you can simply tell QualiWare to load your custom setup and put those QualiWare command. I just tested it as a QCL command here on my QualiWare to have multiple layout or symbol window here, and it worked fine. So you can simply just create a QCL file and load it. Every time people will load it for every repository in QualiWare, it will.
So that's the thing you need to be aware of, right? If I make some of the custom changes, it could only be in one repository, which might be fine. But yeah, or you could make it, implementation wide within your department.
And also be aware that if you create a QualiWare setup, every user can go and edit that QualiWare setup. So if they don't like green and they want pink, they can go in. So depending on the restriction you want to put, a QCL file in a folder is harder to go and edit.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is possible to set the read write to the creator only for the QualiWare setup object. So that would stop that from happening.
True.
Thank you, Devlin. Devlin's going to go through all 160 between now and the end of the fiscal year, right, Devlin?
I'm gonna try.
Next fiscal year. It's your project for the year, right?
But actually, I like the ability to open several dialogues at the same time.
Yeah, I thought that was very useful.
Yeah.
That one looked very cool. Any questions for on that? Further comments? Thank you, Samuel, for jumping in there.
No problem.
Okay, Devlin, I think you're off the hook.
Sweet.
All right. I think that's probably it, Kevin. Yes, I think.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Thanks very much, everybody, for your time. Nice to sort of see you all and hear some of you. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.